Hey guys, what's up? It's Jalen here with another pros and cons on Wednesday, and this week we have a deck that's been used, of course, by one of the most frequently seen members, Joey, of Team Burning Infinity. It's Skull Warriors of Katana World. Let's get on to the pros and cons. For pros, Skull Warriors, so we have to say Yamagitsune. Yamagitsune is the core card of the deck. He's got 5,000 power, 2 crit, and 1,000 defense, and he's got the pay 1 gauge call cost, and his ability to Darkness. To Darkness is an ability when a Skull Warrior, even including himself, does damage to your opponent, then you send it to the drop zone. You send the Skull Warrior that dealt damage to the drop zone, and the owner of Yamagitsune draws a card. So, pretty much, as long as you do damage, you can draw cards as many as you can. And when it comes to Skull Warriors, you can probably draw 3 or 2 cards in a turn, which is great. Or maybe just one. It's an optional effect. Anyway, Yamagitsune is just one of the core cards of the deck, and it's the simple draw power of the deck. Kind of the only one it has outside of maybe that spell, Shinobi Scrolls. But outside of that, that's all the draw power of the deck. But it's still got good. It's still great because just dealing damage and you get to draw a card, that's just fine. And then we've got, for the cons, this is Katana World's hugest con just because of the new ruling, Link Attacks. Link Attacks hurt this deck. Now, with the addition of Snake Gaze, Link Attacks don't happen as frequently because Snake Gaze, if you pay a life, you get to rest the monster on your opponent's side of the field. But even so, without a Snake Gaze in your hand, your Nullifier or the body replacement can only stop attacks that aren't link attacks. So if people start linking your center and add up the crit, you can't block that. And that's kind of really annoying for the deck to deal with. And then it's especially hard if you have a center and then they penetrate by double penetrating, or they link attack it just so they can get the penetrate off and other things like that. So it's really hard for the deck to sometimes deal with link attacks if it does not have a Snake Gaze, or maybe unless they destroy monsters, then you can use Geppa Kagiri to deal with it. And another thing, Geppa Kagiri is a great monster removal card. Needed in the deck, Geppa Kagiri is a pro. Geppa Kagiri, if you don't know, it's when one of your monsters is destroyed, then you get to destroy one of your opponent's monsters. The best way to combo this is when your opponent attacks with a monster, say they have 2 or 3 on the field, you destroy the monster that is not attacked by using Geppa Kagiri when your monster is destroyed since they attacked it. And the easiest way to do this is when you have a monster in the center, so they're probably going to have to kill it, and then when they kill it, then you can get rid of something on the side. A huge flaw in the deck is because all these monsters have really weak defense. The ones that actually don't kill themselves, and I'll get on to that later. The monsters that don't even kill themselves, like Yamagitsune, Orochimaru, sometimes not Garo, these monsters just end up getting smacked over by just about anything. A bronze shield can hit them, a brass shield, anything can smack over these guys. It's just like really hard for you to keep up a defense with these monsters that have like practically 2,000 or less defense. That's pretty much the core of the deck. Monsters with really low defense, but they got really good attack. I don't recall even seeing a monster that has less than 3,000 in their deck, which is really great because 4,000 and up is definitely needed. So that's a good thing about the deck. Con the deck is going to be the gauge needed to do combo plays. Now the combo plays are always optional, of course, but if you really need to go for a push, it requires you to use gauge, such as calling out Yamagitsune, so you can get a draw power to back up that combo play. But then you also might need a card such as Return from the Underworld. And that's another thing I want to touch on. The deck has good Monster Revival. Most decks don't have that, so that's really good. Monster Revival is not seen so much in many decks because either it's really great or it has or there's lots of setup involved, but not when it comes to Return from the Underworld. You just need to pay a gauge and you can get a Skull Warrior, size 1 or less Skull Warrior from your drop zone without paying a call cost. But you pay a gauge to get it out, so it's almost like paying a call cost still, if there was one. I think Yamagitsune is the only one for call cost, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. You can get back your size 1s frequently. You can get your monsters that would kill themselves, like Gagaku, Kimensai. Another thing, Kimensai is the only true penetrate card in the deck. You don't really want to use the weapon, so It has really good penetrate because it has 2 crit and 4,000 power, which is definitely not a slouch. So I'm gonna put that as a pro. Um, but uh, but back on to the previous subject. Monster Revival is really great in the deck because you can get back monsters that killed themselves. Since your monsters have weak defense, you can always keep bringing them back, make a consistent defense, even though it's weak. Um, but another great thing about this deck is that it can play mind games. The way you can play mind games is due to the impact, also part of another thing I was going to discuss later, and along with the way to stop summons, somewhat, Hades Fall. Hades Fall was originally a Ninja Arts card. You pay a gauge, you put a monster in there face down, and whatever size your opponent calls, and it's the same size as the one in the soul from Hades Fall, you can get rid of the card in Hades Fall, drop it to the drop zone, which is great because you can set up for plays such as your Return from the Underworld, and you get to do 2 damage and destroy the monster. Now, if you put a size 2, in Hades Fall, and then they bring out size 2 with Soul Guards such as Drum Bunker Dragon, then the monster with Soul Guard would just lose the card in Soul because it still did enter the field. That's the thing about Hades Fall. The monster has to enter the field, and cards with Soul Guard enter the field with Soul Guard. It's all in one motion. So, pretty much you can save Soul Guard monsters, but the problem is, the great thing is they still get rid of the card in Soul. Hades Fall is a pro on its own. It's kind of one of the great things about the deck. It allows it to stop summons. Since it has problems with its defense, you can deal with your opponent's offense, which is a really great thing in the deck that's really noticeable that you would really like to use, of course. And the next thing is being able to nullify a number of different things. You can stop lots of plays because if you don't know, Secret Sword does not have to work in ninjas only. So you can use Secret Sword, Lethal Formation, and get Star Crusher, Moonfang, or Shooting Star, the 3 different options. And you have the option to nullify a spell, which is always the greatest. Star Crusher, of course, that's why it's the triple rare one. And then we have Moonfang, which deals with impacts. I mean, not many decks run impacts, but impacts are still a hard thing to deal with when you're in final phase. So, just going against Dragon World and potentially killing them before they can finish you off of a Gargantua, or you go against 72 Pillars and Diabolical Hardcore, can be stopped just like that. At the cost of 3 gauge, which is just great because there's a card known as Clear Serenity, which gets you 3 gauge, and it's a counter spell, so you can definitely just combo this well with Lethal Formation, because any card that comes from Lethal Formation, such as Shooting Star, such as the other ones, Clear Serenity gets you basically a free activation of it, so that's just perfect. And you pay 3 gauge, and they take 3 damage. It's just great. There's great ways to just do the 3 damage. You can nullify multiple things, of course. So it just allows the deck to cut down your opponent's offense while it has a weak defense, but it can keep up its offense as well. And another great thing about the deck can definitely be now that it has a chance against other decks because of Snake Gaze. Snake Gaze just gave the deck what it kind of needed to get its feet back on the ground and just plant it there and just say, hey, you can't link attack me, you can't use double attack, and I can still keep up my cards by using body replacement right afterwards. So this allows you to just keep your field at a good and keep going at a good pace against your opponent, so you can slow them down, so you can pick your speed back up and win the game, which is a really great thing I find the deck. But a really bad thing is the instant death monsters. I mentioned this earlier, but instant death monsters are a really painful thing in this deck. Now, the only cards I'm aware of that are even notably played that don't kill themselves are Yami Gitsune and Irikamaru. And Blade Tiger if you're playing that kind of thing. But pretty much Gagaku kills himself, Kemosabe kills himself, Flash Strike Imai Heavy kills himself, and Tempest Garo has potential to kill himself if he uses his ability. So there's plenty of cards in the deck that just killed himself. And then the worst thing about the size too is like Flash Strike Imai Heavy and Tempest Garo, these cards are size 2. You can't bring them back from Return from the Underworld, so you're kind of stuck with them in the drop zone. You can't, and unless you're playing multiple copies, you're not going to see them anymore. So it's really hard for you. I mean, most of the time you want to keep out size 1s and just this full field of size 1s, but sometimes the size 2s are needed because Garo can become a 6,000 double attacker. Flash Vacuum My Heavy gets rid of, it's a Dragonic Thunder for the deck in form of a monster. So these cards are really useful in the deck, but then they just die. And that's another thing about the really bad defense in the deck. When your monsters are constantly killing themselves off, and then some of them can't come back, then you're kind of leaving yourself wide open for attacks, and that's why most people would link attack. And then you want to pay a life for Snake Gaze? Yeah, it's only 1 life, but 1 life can change a lot of things, especially when you're at low life, such as 3 or 4, because that can change the game because you can use an impact. And that would only require you to be able to stop an impact if you have lethal formation. I mean, there's a number of different factors that can happen, but still, you are prominent to get hit by a lot of things, even though you can stop some of them. And the last con I find about the deck is the monsters themselves are easy to remove. Most of the deck is size 1 and size 2, but then even the size 2s are even able to get hit by things like Dragon Breath, or, of course, like other forms of size 2 removal or such. But anything like that. But even though the size 1s have good power, they can still get hit by Dragon Ball Dragonic Thunder. They can still get hit by Power Raid Maximum. They can get hit by Thunder Devastation, especially. They can get by, like, there's a number of cards that can still kill them. Yeah, like, there's still a number of good cards. And then even we have Ancient Worlds, even Dragon Thunder that can touch these things. So it's kind of hard for this deck to sometimes go in because of these weak defense monsters, because some cards can deal with it. But this deck still has a good way to get around walls because of Gepagiri just allowing you to even destroy a wall just by simply them trying to kill off your monsters, and especially if you put a monster in the center. And then you can keep bringing it back with Return from the Underworld, and then you can keep link attacking their monster, and such and such and such and such. This deck has a really good way of just keeping monsters on board, keeping your opponent's monsters off board, and at the same time it can allow you to nullify cards, stop summons, penetrate as well, and it can just go absolutely ham with combo plays, even if you don't have, and you can easily use up the gauge for it because you still have Clear Serenity in the deck, or the new card, Unstoppable Setsujishi. Excuse me if I'm not pronouncing that right, but Setsujishi allows you to put back cards that would usually insta-kill themselves into the gauge from the field. So Gaku and Kimonsai and others ones I've explained before can go right to your gauge instead of dying off. So that card allows you to get more gauge, which is another pro. Final verdict of this deck is very good. Very, very good. Good, but it has really noticeable problems that people can catch up on. Now, the link attack, yes, even with Snake Gaze being around, it can still happen to you. But you can prevent it, but if you can't prevent it, you're still in that same hole. So the deck is still good nonetheless, very good. But its flaws kind of still are there, even with Snake Gaze in the deck. Think a bit more about your plays, because now you can stop link attacks because you're not used to that. So you got to really think about your plays a lot more. This deck is still great, and it's always great in the hands of a great player. Hence why Joey plays this deck. Anyway, I hope you guys like this video. Subscribe to Team Burning Infinity. Stick around for more pros and cons. And comment down below what you want to see in the next episode. And I'll just say I apologize for the last episode for feeling a bit bad because of the low audio from CJ. I didn't know about the problem until the video went up. I deeply apologize for the problem. That won't happen again. I will try my best to make sure it does not happen again. Either way, see you guys later. Jalen going out.